Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back, and this week we're going to do something a bit different. Before I get any further, please hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell symbol for notifications. You'll see it down here. And go to represent.com. We got the shirts, Legend of Superstition Mountain shirts, and Dutch Hunter Rendezvous shirts in the black with white and the gray with black. Check them out, pick them up. We don't make much of anything off of all that. And check out our other videos, by the way, too. So this week we're going to do something different, something I think everyone's seen on the internet at one time or another, and I always get stuff from it. It's like, oh, I was out and I saw on this and I saw on that. And one thing I want to cover is most of what we do and a lot of the information we accumulate and a lot of what I say on here, it comes from books, it comes from manuscripts, it comes from a lot of material that most of you can't access unless you're physically here and you have access to the Historical Society archives, which I actually do. And having perused those things, the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of articles, there's a photograph collection, there's a newspaper collection, there's every book written, fiction and nonfiction, about the Lost Dutchman Mine, the Superstition Mountains, Arizona history area. There's magazine archives of all the different treasure hunting magazines. There's an archive of all the Don's Club, and there's Dutch Hunter collections. So when you go through all these different types of material, it's row after row. I believe there's about at least 5 rows in there of just material, just lined in the shelves, and the filing cabinets that are just full of files of information straight from Dutch hunters and their times in the mountains and their collections. So we reference a lot of material from that. So you get a lot of stuff and you see a video and a guy, he seems to be well spoken and stuff. And unfortunately, most of these people didn't spend any time in there. If they did, they peruse some files or this or that, and they make some quotes and they get stuff really wrong. Or else they do what I always say is they matrix. They find the stuff they like that goes with their theories, and they fully push along with those theories. You get on the internet, you're going to be very, very misled. But I thought today we would take a look at what Wikipedia has in fact or fiction and see if it actually even generally kind of catches on and does what it does. So Lost Dutchman Gold Mine. The Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine is known by similar names, also known by similar names. It doesn't give them right there. It's, according to legend, a rich gold mine hidden in the southwestern United States. Generalization, but that's fine. And it is me. This location is generally believed to be in the Superstition Mountains near Apache Junction, east of Phoenix, Arizona, correct? There have been many stories about how to find the mine, and each year people search for the mine. Some have died on their search. Very true. So far we're really good. The mine is named after a German immigrant, Jacob Waltz, 1810 to 1891, which is generally correct, even though some people believe he was born in possibly 1811 or 1812, but that's close enough because there is arguments either way on that. Who purportedly discovered it in the 19th century and kept its location a secret. We're pretty much good here. The Dutchman was a common American term for a German, Dutch being the English cognate to the German language Deutsch, and not a reference to Dutch people, which is correct. And Jim Barks said something along the lines that he thought calling it the Lost Deutsch Mine didn't have quite the flavor as the Lost Dutch Mine. The Lost Dutchman's Mine is perhaps the most famous lost mine in American history. Arizona place name expert Bird Granger wrote, as of 1977, the Lost Dutchman story had been printed or cited at least 6 times more often than 2 other fairly well-known tales. The story of Captain Kidd's lost treasure and the story of the lost Peg Leg Mine in California. People have been reading the Lost Dutchman seeking the Lost Dutchman Mine since at least 1892, while according to one estimate, 9,000 people annually made some effort to locate the Lost Dutchman Mine. Former Arizona Attorney General Robert K. Corbin is among those who have looked for the mine. All that I'm pretty good with. I don't know, 9,000 people annual. There's a lot of people hike and backpack and spend time in the wilderness of the mountains that don't care, don't have a clue, aren't looking for the Lost Dutchman Mine, so I think that's all fine and good. So, moving from there, we get back to other Lost Dutchman mines. Robert Blair wrote, and Blair had an excellent book if you ever come across Blair's book, wrote, there have been at least 4 legendary Lost Dutchman gold mines in the American West. Yeah, that's all correct. Stories about the mine. Granger wrote, and I don't know why Granger becomes the person we're quoting in here, but fact and fiction blend in to tall tales that there are 3 main elements to the story. The first, Apache gold of Dr. Thorne's mine. Nah, that's not quite, where we go with the Lost Dutchman mine. Blair argued that there were kernels of truth in each of these 3 main stories. I don't know. Kind of getting there. I think this is becoming one person. This is one of the problems we always have with stuff is when you read a book, you have a person's opinion, speculation coming through, and I think that's what we're getting here. So we're going to look at these stories. The first one is the Lost Apache Gold or Dr. Thorne story, which was quoted in a lot of the early books and kind of became less and less quoted, as I believe a lot of people felt the story took place in New Mexico and so forth as time came out. Truth about the Peralta mine. Most likely because Peralta had been the Spanish governor of New Mexico. His family name of Peralta was the inspiration for a number of legends about the American Southwest. James Rivas, and we get into the whole Rivas thing. And it gets into the Baron of Arizona stuff, which really doesn't have anything to do with the Lost Dutchman mine and had really nothing to do with why it was the Lost Dutchman mine or why Julia Thomas and Reinhard Petrasch mentioned the Peraltas and that the man was a man named Peralta. I think that's just, it doesn't need there. Then they have the truth about Doc Thorne, which is fine, which is very cool. The Lost Dutchman story, 2 German men, Jacob Waltz and Jacob Weiser. However, Blair argues, so it's just quoting Blair generally, and this seems odd too, that it's not going after Sims Ely, the Bark Notes, whoever put the Wikipedia page together is citing just simply, it seems, Granger and Blair generally for the most part. And that kind of sucks a bit, kind of makes me just not want to start going through too much of this. John Wilburn and the Lost Ledge of Gold, wrote that the Bulldog Gold Miner, Goldfield, Arizona, very fits well to this. Yes, and I know John Wilburn, and a lot of people have probably watched this and met John Wilburn. I hope John's still doing very well. But yeah, John was quite the self-taught mining engineer and knew a lot more about gold and where gold could be in that area than a lot of people. And I always enjoyed spending time talking with John, and John it got more difficult over the years and so forth. But it's nice we get the quote on John there. So they obviously picked up John's very small, but an important book on the gold in that area concerning those things. The Soldiers Lost Gold gets a little quite short piece, just 2 or more U.S. Army soldiers, which is true, but they're considered French or French-Canadian. And wow, for a story that's gotten so much play, maybe we'll do the 2 soldiers story out of the Bark Notes or something like that, because it literally, I think, is 3 sentences here. And the historical Jacob Waltz, again, we go with Blair. Okay, we know where Jacob Waltz was and whatnot. Relocated in the 1860s and stayed in the territory most of the rest of his life. I would think he stayed in the territory. I don't know if anyone has anything that he left the territory, Arizona territory, during that period of time. The Sterling Legend by S.A. Conister. Still, we're missing Barry Storm, Sims Ely, so many books. So we're kind of running through there, and I'm just not quite sure. Then we get to the death of Adolf Ruth, and that actually, there's more about the death of Adolf Ruth than Jacob Waltz and the Lost Dutchman Mine at this point. Someone had a lot of notes on, tantalizingly, Ruth's checkbook. It was also recovered. And, well, you know why his checkbook was recovered? Because he died with his possessions on him. So, Blair wrote, the National Wire Services picked up the story and ran it for more than it was worth, which is true. And there's a lot of that actually is very true, because there was a lot of, we've seen telegraphs and stuff where they were trying to get ahead of the story and on the story. People involved in it really thought they could make something of it or get something out of it, which is, a news thing. Other searches for the mine, which is only about 3-4 sentences. Glenn McGill for the Killer Mountains, which we don't go into, and he's actually the only one. They say there was other searches, then it talks about Oklahoma City private detective Glenn McGill, so it leaves out pretty much everybody else. Then it goes into the death and disappearances, which lists basically 4. So, of the hundreds, and we could say and talk. Then they talk about Lost Dutchman State Park. Legend of the Superstition Mountains premiered on the History Channel February 8th, 2015. Very nice. The first season of the entertainment program comprised of 6 episodes. That's very nice. They list a number of several books. It's very odd. They list Lust for Gold. They list some television episodes, this and that. I'm still looking for Lost Dutchman Mine Ride, which was at Legend City here. It was in Opryland. They even list Tom and Jerry show. They talk about the In Search Of. They do not, and it says see also Beale ciphers. So we get up into the Beale ciphers, and it is very odd. I'm kind of sorry I did this without really looking through it. I know I'd looked through this before, but there is, so much history there. There's no mention of Julia Thomas and Reinhard Petrasch, which I find very, very odd, because that's the 2 people that Waltz knew, the people that took care of him after he became ill, and that he promised that he would take to the mine. And that seems very odd that they seem to be completely eliminated from the story. So that is just crazy, because I'm looking through here just trying to find anything, but they went with Blair and left everything out. And they were 2 very real people, as well as Jacob Waltz. Historical Jacob Waltz, man named Jacob Waltz. Yeah, I'm just trying to look. There's just so much stuff. Contracted pneumonia during the floods. He died after having been nursed by a woman named Julia Thomas, who was described as a quadroon. And that was it. So the people that started the first searches that were actually in newspaper articles that we have, it's just, I guess it's not non-factual. They don't run into the home story. They don't get into the Peralta maps. They don't get into a bunch of other stuff. So I guess we could say it's fairly accurate. It just simply has some crater-like holes as you're walking around, because if you read this, you'd be like, where's all this stuff that Wayne talks about, or I even read in any book? It just kind of is like a trapdoor, You're just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, there's nothing really here. There's not really any place to go. I mean, you could go to Blair's book. That's cool. And you could look for S.D. Conister's Sterling Legend, which I think is available. You can find it in used bookstores and all. It's a pretty good book. I think other than that, you're pretty much lost. It doesn't mention Dr. Thomas Glover. It doesn't mention Helen Corbin's books, even though it does mention Bob Corbin briefly. It could mention her books. It doesn't, it's just kind of a bit crazy. I would give it definitely a D. It's passing enough. I mean, it's a D that can pass, because I think the most unfortunate thing is, even though it doesn't give you enough information, it's not totally wholly inaccurate, but the problem is it doesn't give you enough information to really go anywhere on. There is no Wikipedia page for Jacob Waltz. There's no link or anything to Julia Thomas. It doesn't mention Reinhard Petrasch or Herman or Gottfried or any of that stuff. You don't get even Sim Zeeley or Barry Storm, who wrote very, very, very unpopular books. It doesn't give you anything of a bibliography. It talks about all these books and all this stuff. It gives you some television shows, some comics, cartoons. It talks about the Peralta. Yeah, it generally talks about TV programs and stuff like that. So it doesn't give you anything in popular culture. It doesn't give you a bibliography. I'm looking through the citations and trying to see if there's anything in here that I would say, hey, it will, but it doesn't actually give you. It gives Tom Collenborn One Man's Dream Air Rescue. So Tom doesn't even get his book in here in the article. That would have been awesome. It gets Gentry in there, but it's just basically mentioning Oklahoma detective Glenn McGill in the book written Killer Mountains by Kurt Gentry. So it doesn't give you any information. So you do get that one book out of it, which has pretty good information in it, but I don't think it's out being published anymore. So I would give it a D-, that it's passing, because it actually is correct, I would say, generally for the most part. The biggest problem that we're looking at here is it doesn't give you really any real information to follow up on or anything. So it's not like an encyclopedia. If you were trying to do a research paper, you'd be really, really hard struck to kind of actually move forward off of this in any way, because there's nothing really there that you could base it on. And the pictures are pretty bad too. I didn't really follow through the Adolf Ruth stuff because I really hate to go through that. We did talk about Adolf Ruth and the fact that death certificate does not say he died of homicide, so there was no investigation, there was no search and none of these things for the people that murdered Adolf Ruth, because if it wasn't listed as a homicide, they wouldn't have had a murder investigation and they wouldn't have been looking for the people that killed him. They were looking for a missing elderly man when they found him. That was, once the medical examiner's report came back, that was it. And it was over. And a lot of people like to dramatize that and stuff and say, but, well, it's just there was certain things that people would like you to believe that are not correct. So very disappointing. But again, let's give it a D- because it wasn't incorrect. It just wasn't much of anything. So yeah, if you're going to Wikipedia, I mean, the forums, I can't say you're going to get much better, because once you start going through the forums, unless people are citing directly material and giving you the footnote of where they're pulling that material, a lot of times that is, and right or wrong, it's speculation and opinion. And when you get into speculation and opinion and what your thoughts are concerning a subject, it's completely and wholly different than doing these sort of things. And so that being said, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you everybody for watching. Again, I know a lot of people have been waiting for us to get back into the bark notes, and I want to do the two soldiers. I want to do a couple of them. Sometimes we'll have to break them into a couple parts. I don't want to do a lot of just reciting reading. I like to kind of move things around the place a little bit and kind of touch base about different types of subject matter. I know there's people that like to hear the ghost stuff or the Bigfoot stuff or the serpentine people stuff, and people want to know when we're going to get back down into the holes and get back into the mines and back out there, and it's cooling down and the COVID thing won't stand in our way at a certain point, and we'll be getting back out in the mountains. But yeah, for right now, just join with us each week and we will get you some chasing legends and kind of get you something. So I hope you enjoyed this week, and like I said, if you like, hit subscribe, hit notifications, leave a comment, pick up a t-shirt, you know. And for everybody who comes out to the rendezvous, we're still looking to push things through and push things on. So hopefully the cooler weather's starting to drop in, the fire restrictions will be lifted, and we will be down there. We'll just keep ourselves a little bit apart, and we will still go through with things. Hopefully next week we'll even have more news on that. So thanks for joining us, Chasing Legends. Take care, and we'll catch you next week.